Good morning, Striver. It's a great day for ITAM. Come on, ITAM, SAM, configuration management. We know how this all works, do we? Not always.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes that's the mystery is what keeps it going. Oh, hey, welcome to today's ITAM Kitchen. You know, Rob, it's amazing. We started this in January. It's going on to May. And it's like, has it really already been 4+ months? And it's like, yes, it has, right? It just adds to it. And that's awesome. Right?
It sure has.
Because some of the great content we've had today has been amazing on several different fronts. And today's topic on the accidental CMDB is figure out, okay, how do we cut the cord? How do we cut the cord next step? For those who don't know me, my name's Bill, Mr. Bill, a recovering IT practitioner. 30+ years experience, asset management, software asset management, configuration management. Look for a role. I've probably done it in one way or another. Do I know it all? No one never will, but that's the fun part. You have to figure out how it all works and having fun and helping enable others. That's the icing on the cake. A little cherry on top, if you want to call it that. And that's the fun part. And I have with me my colleague in crime here, Rob Collins. So Rob, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll get started on our topic.
Just a brief introduction. I've been doing this. I've been doing IT asset management in one form or another for like more than 30 years at this point, right? Going all the way back to when I was a U.S. Marine in the late 80s to early 90s. And then to two government agencies over the course of 26 years. And then as a private consulting firm for like 5 years with exposure not only to ITAM and other of related topics, but also to AI and some of the integration of systems and whatnot. I got to hear more of your pain points, and that's really helped me to develop over time. So here today, we share it all with you.
Absolutely. And this is where the fun happens. It's just when you think about how we look at that next step, it's being able to further. It's not about doing status quo, and Rob and I were just talking about that. Okay, why do we replace a tool? All sorts of different reasons. And just give a little background in this case, we have two different scenarios. One scenario is we have a banking institution, small to mid-size.
That's right.
They have Sharewell that's going to end of life this year. And it's like, let's go bring in another tool. So we want Freshworks. Pardon me a second. You have Freshworks. I'm trying to get my voice back. And being able to say, okay, let's make their CMDB work. Freshworks, they have the CMDB. So what they did is they had the asset manager, software asset manager said, you know what, you're doing so well. Add CMDB to your list, figure out how to make it all work. And there you go. Freshworks says it's going to work. And I'm not saying it does or doesn't. And by the way, we have not been endorsed by any of these vendors on that side. And the other scenario, and this is happening in parallel. We have a insurance institution, a well-known brand, actually, that's decided to move from ServiceNow to Freshworks. And they had a fully functional ServiceNow environment. They said, I can't pay that cost anymore. That just doesn't make sense. I'm not seeing the value from it. So we're going to go to move a smaller type tool because that's going to be good enough for us. Well, then the decision was not made by the team. Everyone actually pushed against it. It was an executive decision based upon cost. And from that, the similar type of environment, they had an individual leading this hardware and software asset management said, you know what, you've been doing so well, implement the CMDB while you're at it. We've not done well previously in the ServiceNow instance, and you should be able to do it no problem within Freshworks. Again, none of these vendors have endorsing us or there's no monetary commitment for anything here. This is just us talking as practitioners and having an open dialogue. We've been doing this for the entire month of April. If you haven't seen the previous sessions, it's all out there. We're literally going to have, this is going to make 12 hours of content just on this topic. And what we've been doing is talking about, okay, what's the switch out? What to expect? How the next step, right? And today's about, we've gone to the point, we had the executive reveal and understanding some of that on Friday. Today is about cutting the cord. We're cutting the cord to say, okay, the old tool's going to be turned off. We have it. It's good enough. It's time to turn it off and time to move forward. We have the new system in place, the new processes there, the change management in place. We're moving forward. It's time to cut the cord. Before we get started, though, Rob and I were actually just prior to starting, we were talking about a little bit. There's also a little bit of context to think about how we ended up in the scenario we are. And there's additional scenario we thought about
Mhm.
with this that we have not talked about. And let's start there, Rob, and then we'll talk about the cutting the cord, because that's not too bad. But I think it's important for everyone to realize that these decisions in these two scenarios are actually management driven, right? And the management driven monetary system, but both these scenarios, literally, the asset management folks were not involved with the decision for the tool. So I'm not saying they would do thumbs up. I'm not saying they would do thumbs down, but I'm just saying it was not there. But there's an important other aspect to think about
Mhm.
when you start changing out tools, because it's so easy to say, we're going to do this tool swap. It's going to provide the cat's meow, etc. But this is also, Rob, I want you to talk about your story a little bit, is for a scenario you actually are kind of directly involved with, well, indirectly, but you were directly involved with initially, but there's also a tool swap out, right? And what comes to mind with this is when we talk about when you're going to change a tool, is a tool going to fix the core problem at hand?
Mhm. Oh, for sure. And this goes back to the original basis of all this is you're doing your IT asset management, or if you do a properly managed program, right, then you're going to have all the asset management for the organization, but you're going to have the asset management for the IT, which supports the business and its objectives. So keeping in mind really that initial alignment should occur to some degree from business objectives all the way to IT and then the ITAM support of those things. So that being said, right, CMDB is often used as a replacement for an asset management database, and because often the cataloging of what you purchased maybe isn't quite 100%. Maybe you're not capturing everything, so you're going to have a lack of visibility. Because the service management tools do this in an operational lifecycle, the CMDB is there to support that. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, that's the reason why IT asset management either isn't being discussed initially, which it should be part of the planning, and also because when you start actually applying and using the tools, now you have to ensure that those assets are online, and that they're scanned, and that you're frequently updating the CMDB. This is a living system. This is not static. It's not like spreadsheets, right? And it's going to support all of the above, all going all the way back to the business objectives.
Well, it is, and it's also, but what does this all bring to mind, right? When you think, when someone comes to say, okay, the tool's going to fix the issue.
Oh, well, if you even had documentation of all of the processes in the first place, right, a tool itself is not going to fix that. Often this all starts with the process, whether or not it's even being done or is documented, all the way up to just checking the efficiency of those steps to ensure you're getting the outcomes that you want. A lot of times there's gaps there. And if that's not working, or if it's not documented, if you don't have process, right, it doesn't matter what tool you put in place.
Well, it's also important to acknowledge the processes you have, because there's one
Yes.
thing to say you don't have processes, but it's also being able to say, you know what, we have processes, and sometimes the systems don't align correctly with what we really need,
Yeah.
right?
There's a number of scenarios there, or they're just not being performed consistently. There's an output, for instance, of an asset management record whenever you're doing your intake process for any assets that you receive, whether they're physical or virtual, electronic, etc., cloud, all those things, right? And they all need to be accounted for. And remember, you're using this in the context of an operational environment, so it's a CMDB, right? Well, these are things that you have to manage, and you have to have visibility on them. It's the whole reason why it's been used as a substitute, because those discovery processes, when working properly, will load that record of what's out there, what's switched on, who's got it, who uses it, all of those
Mhm.
things.
Well, it is, and being able to say, okay, we've got this, that next step,
Mhm.
right? That's huge. Um, because what I found, and maybe you found the same, Rob, is there's one thing that, like you said, you brought up a system and you know something's being changed out, right? The
Yeah.
potential to change out product, et cetera. You don't
Oh,
know if
yeah.
it's end of life, vendor dispute,
Mhm.
whatever it may be, right? It may be just, okay, a lack of functionality.
Yeah.
But it was also your baby,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, this is true. And so this is because I understood how it was designed and how it worked. And when I say system, I'm talking not just about the tools, but the tools, the people that interact with the process, who's informed across an
Mhm.
entire agency, right? And it's critical that all of those silos are still being informed and consulted as necessary based on the processes that were put in place
Oh
and
yeah.
the specific tools. What I guess what I don't understand about this particular scenario is the perceived need to replace a system, which if it doesn't have security related issues, it's not going to go out of life if it's still being supported. If their licensing is up for that tool for all the functions that they use it for, to me, I can't conceive of a time when something like that would necessitate replacement unless it's another driving factor, like this tool costs too much, or we don't feel like we're getting adequate support from the vendor. Those kinds of things are different. I've had to make decisions to switch systems for that. It's for those kinds of reasons.
Well, it's also where the buy-in, trying to when you hand it off to the other
Yeah,
individuals, and I've had this happen too, right? The handoff and the passion that you have for your efforts and understanding the overall solution is not always transferable to the other individual. Not
yeah,
saying you did not do knowledge transfer or something like that, but the passion you truly have, and that's an important
that's
part,
true.
right?
Yeah, it hits in two ways, right? One is the passion to have delivered a system that checked the boxes, as those needs, those specifications were ironed out and approved ahead of time, right?
Oh yeah.
Is it actually capturing? I needed to capture all the Microsoft stuff. I needed to capture all the IBM stuff, et cetera, right? And in some cases, it didn't by design, not for the lack of trying by the tool, but rather the tool manufacturer. I had a direct experience trying to identify all instances of IBM, for instance, in the organization. Well, the fact of the matter is that we didn't have ILMT, and so I was looking for it using other but traditional methods. There's no way
Mhm.
you can see all of this stuff unless you actually have ILMT or you actually have one of the third-party equivalents that IBM has blessed for that activity. But yeah, getting back to that though, yeah, I mean, so if you design it right and you put a lot of passion into it, you wanted to make sure it did all the things it's supposed to, right? Another person may or may not see it this way. They may not understand the value or appreciate it, to be honest. The other is that, uh, well, now I forget where I was going. So that train of thought got derailed as if this wasn't enough. But just, yeah, that ownership and that sense of pride in the thing,
Mhm.
that's not always gonna transfer.
Well, it's not in the um, what is it? It's sometimes it's an added task to someone else too. So they don't have the bandwidth even to take it on.
Yeah.
So you have that, which happens, which is the reason why I brought that up to start off our conversation for today on cutting the cord. It's
Yeah.
important to have those key attributes and exports or the data out
Yeah.
of the system to make sure you have it, you can rely upon it for future use if required for auditing purposes, if
Yeah.
nothing else, right?
That should be done no matter what, every single
Mhm.
time, because you need a fallback position in the event that you discover a failure today, or you discover a failure that occurs 4 years from now, even if it is applicable and correctable to all of the data before.
Right.
Uh, if it doesn't work out well, you need to have that fallback position ready to go, so you can go back to operational in the event of failure. Is what I'm getting at.
Mhm.
So those kinds of things are like critically important to do. And then if you're going to keep stuff like that, what's the length of time that you keep it for? Neither of us are attorneys, but when working in those matters, the default is a 3-year statute of limitations, pretty much no matter where you are within the U.S. But then specific data requirements are going to be dependent on the use of the data, what the data contains, if it's a HIPAA, for instance, or a pay card system, or any of that stuff. ID.
Mhm.
There are specific regulations for that, and you know what? An IP attorney, a phone call away, or a chat away, or you can get to this stuff. You can look it up.
Yeah, for me, I actually usually use the 7-year rule.
Mm.
I use a 7 year. I mean, to your point, 3 years is a good steady.
Yeah.
I do 7 years because by the time you're looking at if anything historical, and maybe you have a system, you have all the data. Okay, pull it out
Yeah.
and just put it in a flat file, and there you go. You have a reference. I mean, I've always used the 7 year rule and been pretty solid on that. Not saying the 3 year rule is bad, but it's me more, okay, how can you further extend it? But everyone has, to your point, you should also look at what regulatory actions you're under. That's an important aspect for some of these systems. And we're talking about banking institutions and insurance, and they have plenty of regulations around these individuals, right? And you were talking about governance on top of it. That kind of falls in the same fold to a degree. Okay, how much data do you really need to track from a historical standpoint? There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that.
But just know that there aren't just one, because it depends very specifically. Like for instance, the data, for instance, it might cover CIO communications, which is this is another ownership right here, is what this is, right? But just keep in mind that you might have to keep that stuff for 10 years or 20 years, or
Exactly.
depending upon the communication and the documentation, into perpetuity.
That's true. Yeah. Great point. Great point. Again, you need to do some research on it. We're giving kind of rules of thumb, but also what's the rule of thumb for your environment specifically? Because it's also about where you're the expert for your environment. We're not. We're just telling you from the experiences what we've been through.
Yeah.
And that different insight, right? So that's
Yeah. We know who to talk to. So there's
yeah,
guidance there, really.
Yeah, we're giving that. We're giving from a trusted advisor saying, ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ask is not a bad thing. And when you ask management this, they may say, I don't know. It's like, okay, well, how do we know? Because that's what management's supposed to help you with, right? Yeah.
Or who would know? Because they might be able to say, yeah, go Sylvia, she's an expert on this.
Yeah.
Go talk to this attorney that runs our legal section. They can give you an intro,
Yeah,
get your
exactly.
ball rolling.
Exactly. We kind of went a little tangent at the beginning for a few minutes just to give you insight on something as far as transferable, inside, cutting the cord, et cetera, from a data perspective.
Yeah.
But let's talk about systems for a minute, because I've been around many environments that they still have old systems still turn on with the databases years, almost decades later sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And being able to just, let's talk about the cost of that, right? Of the system and the maintenance, and because everyone says, oh, that's just pennies on the dollar. In today's cloud environment, that's no longer the case.
Yeah. You get hit with a bill, somebody will come running, very upset look on their face, holding whatever documentation that we had. Yeah. But the idea is this, that if you did a proper implementation plan, right, then your cutover should all be in that plan and part of it, and how long you keep systems up in parallel, the older systems, before it's time to switch them down, before it's time to back them up, and before it's time to sort of just begin to close the books on all of those tools. Mm-hmm. Data retention was one consideration, right? Failover is another consideration. And so just depending on what the system is. In this case, let's just say it's ticketing systems, right? And one strategy, for instance, that was used for a cut in to ServiceNow is we made copies of the previous system and we've kept those on file, right? Because not only did we need this information in case of failure, we also needed this information to audit what we understood went over to the new system. Because once you've done that data transfer, you want to come back and you want to start doing all of that QA, QC around, did it all make it over there? Was anything changed at all? The quantities, are they correct? Is it what we expected? Will we be loading previous or older data into the system afterwards once stability tests have been performed? Because there are other ways that you get what you want to keep. And all of this, it also should have been defined at that initial project testing as well, or the development of the specs for it. And those are just a few of the places to look, but there'll be other areas. If you basically pick a silo related to IT asset management or IT operations, they're going to have some information that they relied upon, and they're going to continue to rely upon it in the next system. So using this as a framework for ensuring that everything works as expected and that you don't have to address any other issues like any kind of remediation, right? You do this, but you do eventually say we're no longer going to point to this server to send data, or we might do it in parallel for a very short period of time, and then do audits, and then make the decision to cut away. So those are a lot of different things when we're talking about moving into new systems from our old systems.
Yeah, the other thing it keeps in mind is kind of it's a hybrid between it's also saving costs as well as where you put the data, right?
Yeah.
I would say for that extracted data, and say you have a table or multiple rows that you pull out of different aspects. It could be the assets, you can talk about CIs, you can talk about how you look at software entitlements, and you flatten it out. Is I would create within your instance of your database for the Freshworks as an example, and this goes for any type of instance, right? Create tables just for that data within it. Whether it's in the same database as the manufacturer, which I don't usually recommend that. Sometimes you can put it kind of outside of it. And anyone who's been around databases, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's within the same database instance, but it's not in the same database. And you have to be able to extract that and pull it out as you need. Because then you don't have to worry about files just sitting around. That makes sense? So say you have a spreadsheet. I'll simplify it a little bit further. You have a spreadsheet with all this data. And it has 20 or 40 or 50 different columns in it and thousands, maybe a million rows in it. You put that just to port it, have a database, have a DBA port into a table. So when you're ready and you need to, you just access it and it says, here you go for the data, and it's not sitting in a hard drive. It's not sitting in a spreadsheet somewhere, and people don't know what to do with it, right? It's access there for when you need it. It allows you to gather it for historical purposes. Again, it keeps it quite clean, and from a maintenance perspective, this is static data. This is not changing, right? And you want to throw an index on it depending upon the size. I'll talk DBA type for a second. But you put the table out there, say, okay, when I need it, I know I can access it, whether it's via Excel, Access, whatever your tool is. Maybe it's your database, or maybe Freshworks can connect to it if it needs to. Okay, you can do that too, potentially. Okay. I don't know for sure. But you have the data out there to say, okay, from a cost perspective, we're turning off the old system. It goes away. We're going to back it up, put a file. It goes away, and they'll never, ever land, whatever that's supposed to mean, right? Yeah. And I have my core data. That's from a cutting the cord. It makes it really simple, and honestly, it's not hard to do. That's what I mean by simple. It's not hard from an administrative side. It's not hard from a conceptual side as well. And management's going to say, as long as you can get to it, or we can get to it as a business when necessary. And by the way, make your tables descriptive. I'm talking about true DBA. Sometimes don't think about descriptive tables, but make it so it's usable. So think about that when you start cutting off the cord, because why do we want to cut off the cord, right? We've talked about maintenance. We've talked about being able to say, okay, what are we paying for the solution itself? Well, how are we getting support? These are all reasons why you need this to go away as soon as possible. I say, well, Bill, it might be 6 months. Okay, fine, 6 months. If that's what it is, 6 months is not a big deal. Right? You're talking about that too. But keep in mind, you need to push towards this closure, because this actually puts the final touch on the entire project for the migration. I didn't say the program, the project.
Right. Just the project to replace the tool. That's it. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense. And yeah, and I've heard, for instance, of where they've taken data, for instance, they've loaded them into failover tables within the database, so that if for any reason there's a break, then it switches. It's automatic. So not too difficult. Yeah. But I would definitely, if you're going to do that, consider what the costs, for instance, are of a file copy versus, let's say, an ETL load that would pick the stuff up or load it into a set of tables. Because they're going to be operational costs to standing up duplicate tables and whatnot as well. And for failover purposes, for instance, it makes sense, and those are justifiable. So just do that. But again, a lot of this should have been done all the way in the planning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And And some of this you may not think of until, I'll be honest, it should have been, but we can always should upon ourselves, right? There you go. But we have to think of that. There you go. We have to say, okay, what kind of adjustments can we make along the way? And that's the important part at this point, because we have tools being brought offline, whether it's discovery tools, we have ServiceNow or Sharewell being brought offline. Things, the tables are going to change, etc. You honestly, for me, and I'll speak for me, those systems need to go away. I only want the data that's pertinent to me. I'm going to be selfish, right? Don't worry about all of it, everything else. Well, I need it. It's like, do you really? It's not, do I need it? What do I need? Right?
You bring up a really good point, and that is that there are times, because system redundancy is, excuse me, it's good when you have a purpose for it, but then the project itself comes to an end. And when it does, it's time to deprecate those systems, and it's time to do full end of life cycle management at that point. So if it's hardware, you no longer need this stuff, keeping it now becomes a security vulnerability or risk, then it's time to document those systems, get them accounted for, and get ready for ITAD. And let's get those boxes out of here. We won't need the space to hold them, to guard them, to monitor them, or protect them if we're finished with them. And then in some cases, this material can either be reused or it can be recycled, so that you're taking those elements back to those parts of the manufacturing process.
Well, it's also, you have to think about your own sanity. I'll put it that way. You only have so much bandwidth. There's only so much bandwidth that you personally have. The time, that's the one thing we're all limited by. We only have a certain amount of time we can work within. If you keep that system on, and for some reason it hiccups or anything, now you have to support it plus the other new system, and you have to think, okay, what is this? This is being really efficient. I'll use the word efficiency in this case, right? Or is this just become burdensome? If it's become burdensome, you need to find a way to remove it. I'll be brutally honest.
It's just not efficient. Get to the end, call it, and you move on with current systems. You'll have plenty to do.
And well, so let me add to that. When you have systems, say, actually both environments, they're very integrated. They have their Sharewell in their ServiceNow environment, very integrated. They've also come to the point that say, well, we have to keep, now I have to duplicate within two systems. Like, hold on, nope, we're moving, right? And if you don't like it, you're gonna have to do a swivel chair. You are gonna have to do the swivel chair. You're gonna have to push back. It's like, guys, I don't have the bandwidth. There's no way. Even if I added 5 different resources to say, okay, we're gonna put the exact same data in 2 systems, is that really efficient, right? Even if you're talking about offshore, I'm just gonna call it out and say, okay, well, we want inexpensive resource to do it. That swivel chair, error prone. The opportunities there for just more mistakes, it's insane. So when we think about cutting the core, it provides closure as a whole for the entire business.
For the old project, yeah.
Well, it's business as well as it allows you to move forward and work on your new job, because as you work in this new tool, I should say new job, more new tool with a new set of activities with a new tool, you're going to have to advance it. Now is the opportunity for you to say, okay, let's remove the legacy. We have backups that we need it. But it's time to start advancing where we are, because we can only get so much done within this certain period of time. And that's also very important. That's what cutting the cord allows you to do, is it allows you the freedom to say, okay, I didn't realize how burdensome that was. That's gone. Yeah, I've got this big mountain pile I need to take care of and start climbing on and start dwindling it down. But now I can work on it because I'm no longer worrying about that legacy system.
Yeah. That's why there's no point in maintaining more than one. When you don't maintain more than you need, anything like that's considered waste.
Because honestly, in asset management, we know our world's evolving. And maybe from a listener perspective, you're focused on strictly hardware and software, more ITAM and SAM in traditional sense. And my question for you is, where are you in configuration management? Where are you as far as complementary configuration management? Where are you on the financial side of all of that? Are you ignoring it? Is the business ignoring it? The question is why, right? It typically is. I'd say over 50% of folks out there are ignoring the financial sides of ITAM today. 50%. I'll just put it out. And I'm not talking about procurement feeds. I'm talking about a lot more than that. I'm talking about chargebacks. I'm talking about how you look at the cost, how they're related, et cetera. It's totally big. It might be, it actually is probably closer to 75% if I was to look at reality. It's not the way it used to be. And people say, well, okay, FinOps is going to solve it. FinOps is not going to solve your problem, right? You still have to work through it. So be able to evolve yourself and figure out, okay, how can I raise my own, not just a profile for you, but raise the profile of the program for you to advance. Things you don't usually think about, Rob, when you start cutting the cord, right?
Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on your involvement. I've been in more than a dozen of those kinds of projects over time. Starting very, very early on, for instance, we were putting PC technology out into the field at all of our ambient monitoring sites, for instance, and how that was managed. We've been doing that, on and on for the decades that followed. So, implementing, for instance, when Office first went to 365, doing that across the board. But before that, letting customers know that, you can actually install this on like up to 5 machines, and they have that option to do that. But then there's the security and whatnot on the back end too. There's a lot to think about. I would say that any time that an effort like this occurs, and hopefully you did the planning, that you're also talking about the sunsetting of, no longer necessary workflows or relationships, for instance, that the older system was dependent on, that the newer system you no longer need. So in other words, this thing will pay dividends if it's done properly, if it's managed properly, and it gives you that opportunity to look for extensions of savings, maybe to the second degree, to the third degree.
It does. Actually, you brought up an interesting point: is the impact on the other stakeholders.
Yeah,
it does impact them as well. And keep in mind, you can have a fully integrated system with ServiceNow. We're trying the Freshworks, right? Different type of environment, different type of system. When I say environment, right? Different type of system, how it's being collected, how it's being used. I'll say it's more simplified. I'm just no disrespect to both technologies, but it's more simplified compared to what you'll see in ServiceNow. I'm not saying it's not more functional, et cetera. I'll let someone else do the comparison. My point's not to judge on that. But when you think about it from a stakeholder perspective, we're talking about asset management, software asset management, configuration management. What you may or may not realize is your stakeholders are also counting on you to help drive that part of the business. And when you think about the attributes and how you're putting it, you're changing their business processes as well. So when you start cutting the cord on the existing systems, now the gaps are really going to be seen.
That's the other thing that should have happened back in planning. If you knew you were going to replace this one system, you better have known all of the dependencies. I mean, if you didn't, that's just terrible. You find those dependencies when system A goes offline and system B comes online and doesn't have links to any of those dependencies.
Happens all the time.
They'll let you know.
Oh yeah, well, that's kind of why cutting the cord is also important, right?
Yeah.
So you cut the cord, and at that point you're knowing now. You know now, not 6 months from now, because everyone's going to procrastinate. I know I'm just as bad as anybody, right? Okay, give me 6 weeks. I'll make it happen. Life happens. More projects come on my plate. More conversations occur. Executive meetings, new initiatives happen. Just keep stacking on, right?
Yeah.
And that's those 6 weeks fly like that. There's nothing flat, right?
Oh, they can. Hopefully, you're doing those check-ins as periodically as needed. It's 3 times a week for a system implementation, depending upon what you're standing up, and making sure everything works, capturing any gaps so that those things can be remediated immediately. I've been there. That's been fun too.
Well, it's fun on many different levels. But think about how you're able to further enhance that, right? And by cutting the cord to say, okay, let's accelerate this. People's like, well, I don't want to deal with the pain. honestly, the quicker you deal with the pain, the quicker the pain will, right?
Or stay on schedule. I would do that because if you find you get ahead, you might need that time to address failures. So it's good to bank those advancements.
Mm-hmm. So with this, what else comes to mind from a story perspective? I know for me, when it comes to bringing the system online, cutting the cord in the other system, we're talking about some of it. To your point, you might find out you need to add more workflows. So it's about product enhancements that you need really quickly. I think that's also important, right?
Yeah, some of those processes, for instance, that we used to do when I first took on operations management and I had my first team. One of the first things that I became aware of is the list of all the activities the team does, and that if they are busy, then somebody needs to step up and do it. So that began for me with learning tape backup systems, because at some point we moved away from tape backup systems to digital. Now there were different tools used, different processes. Documentation needs to be put in place because that's part of an SOP for, at the time, it was our shared data center. And it was actually located right across the street from the main headquarters building. So keeping those things going as you advance in tools and as you create those interfaces is critically important for those of you that have moved into a tool as complex as ServiceNow. All those great customizations because your people didn't read the existing columns, so you had to stand up new columns that were not necessary, or you had to stand up workflows because you weren't educated in how the system worked. If you didn't catalog every single one of those changes, when it's time to move to the next major version, all right, you're going to kind of be in trouble because you got to go back to all of those documented changes that you made because you have to reapply those changes.
Oh, absolutely.
So be mindful of that. Inefficiencies are great, but please document.
Well, and when you talk, you're going to, well, the documentation, that's always been a sore spot for me because I was always usually when I finished documentation for my projects, now I'll keep mine, I'm a legacy type guy, right? Typically a minimum of 300 pages. 300 pages. Documentation for me, I even put documentation inside the code. So when I went back to, and it paid off dividends actually, when I went back to work with my own code, within my own code, I was a consultant, went back to, further enhance. It wasn't code. Sometimes it's more further enhance, right? Because sometimes these workflows can be complex. You have hiccups or a system issue that occurs. You have to find additional workarounds and do a fix. I'll say, no, it doesn't work anymore. Those all sorts of scenarios. But that documentation has bailed me out more than once. That's the best way to put it, right?
And you have to have it. I mean, you either do it like you should as you develop new systems and techniques and workflows and whatnot, or you do it because you got an audit coming up and, oh, crap, we didn't bother to write this down, but we do it all the time. Doesn't matter. If you're going to go get your 27001 certification, guess what you're going to now be in the world of work. You're going to be doing nothing but documentation. So I hope that you have writers ready. I hope that you have process people ready, because it's going to be a massive exercise if you haven't done it up till then.
And there's a chance in these environments that may be you.
Yep. Sure
maybe
could
the
be.
individual themselves, right?
Sure was.
Yeah, it was for me too. We talk about documentation because the thing that drives me a little crazy, I'm just going to call it out, is I asked for process and documentation. They said, oh, it's in the tool. Never trust that answer. Never trust that answer, right? Now I will document within code. Don't get me wrong. I will code and extract out and show it. But anyone that tells me it's within the tool and you need to go look tells me they did not do their job.
Yeah.
I'm just going to call them out.
Yeah, you can call them out and say, oh, great. Well, if that's the case, then I need for you to sit down and do the following process. Now show me where you do this. And good luck peering through it, because it's like the software, the tool, right? It's got 3 different manuals, if you will. There's a user's manual, right? And then there will be some form of a technical manual that shows more or less how everything is connected and works. And then you're going to have the equivalent of the Haynes manual for a vehicle. This is a complete teardown rebuild of the system and all of its characteristics. how expensive do you suppose that documentation would be if it's even made available? Right?
Exactly.
No, that's something. It's not an acceptable answer, and if you were in an audit situation, that answer wouldn't fly there either. You would have
Actually, that is an awesome point.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an awesome point, right? In the auditing scenario.
Yeah.
You need to prepare for audits with the system turned off, the old system, legacy system turned off. If that's the case, whereas the process, the workflow, the handoffs, who your stakeholders are, I mean, these are all documented within a lot of documents. It's required by a lot of regulations today, right, to show this. And from an auditing perspective, see, I'm an auditor, not just a data auditor. I'm actually a process auditor, etc. I look at the entire activity. That's just my life, right? And an advisor. But to do that, and the reason why people ask for me to come back is because I go kind of like what we're talking about here. Let's go piece by piece. Let's talk through the story. Let's understand what's happening. And I will ask them, it's like, is this available? Is it not? Show me, right? Show me how it works. And I love your example of that. I'm from the show me. I grew up in Missouri. I'm a show me state guy. So yeah, show me. Provide those examples.
Yeah, when I was doing the ambient monitoring stations and that work, doing the pollutant detections and the calibrations and all of that, we would have two types of audits that would occur. One of them was quarterly and the other one was once a year. The management system audit is, many of you should be familiar with this. This was our annual thing that happened, right?
Okay.
And it was great. Talked about where everything is, how the data moves, how you mark off QA, QC flag, comment, etc. And then you do the telemetry and the reporting to ensure that you're sending everything and it gets to the other side, that the data is unchanged, etc. So there's that. But then there's the on-site stuff, right? These are the quarterly audits where you literally take a technician and you say, you have the equipment. I want for you to perform a calibration on the ozone analyzer, right? There are a series of components. There's a workflow that you have on paper that you follow. And some folks do it step at a time, reading through. That's a perfect score, right? And some folks do it by memory, right? And they'll maybe check themselves. And that would also could result in a perfect score. Some people just simply do it by rote. And if they've done it enough times, they're flawless. It's impeccable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But falling back to the SOPs on how to do these things is critical in that case. The same thing is going to happen within any kind of an internal audit you're going to pull on your security controls or your operations or your asset management or your change management, any and all of those different silos, those areas right there. Right? And so it's important, right, to do those periodically to ensure that people are doing it the right way. Or if there's a question about how to do it, they know right where to go and grab an answer and keep working in 5 to 10 minutes.
Everybody needs a library. But no one pays attention what's in their library these days.
Well, you'll find out if you have a fire and you realize there's no instructions on water.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because the closure also provides closure for the executives too, for leadership, the vendors, licensing, there's the stakeholders. When you think about the closure and the kind of cord, that's huge all the way across, from just state of mind as well as reducing the risk. I think you mentioned that just a little bit ago. Reducing the risk of any impact you have because now you have a closed system. Right. You have your core data out, done. We're moving on with life.
Yeah, your chairs and your executives have things to execute on. So as soon as this one is wrapped up and they have high confidence that they're no longer needed, they're moving to the next things. And so that life goes, And so when you're standing these things up, you want to make sure you did your due diligence, that you did all that you could do, right, to ensure the success of the project. And it's time to close down. So I think the most important takeaway from all that, though, and I hope we talk about it next, and that is once it's closed, please follow through and do a post-mortem, an after-action report, a debriefing, whatever you want to call it. That thing at the end of any effort that more often than not is ignored because it's not business as usual. Please don't neglect to do that.
No, that's a great point. But I also say, I'm going to go back to data for a second. When we talk about data moving across, don't be a data hoarder. Don't be a data hoarder when you have to have all this information. You get too much.
Stick to
You'll
your
never
regs.
use it.
Stick
Well,
to your regulations. They're going to protect you.
Well, you've got that, but also I think about software. Think about discovery, software discovered by software, right? Millions of rows typically. And that'll be true for both these organizations because of the size of the organizations, because that's just typical. Do you need all those software installations to come across to be stored for a future date? No.
I hope it's just being followed up with an application rationalization exercise, because that's a massive place to reduce complexity and risk, and to find some cost savings.
Well, I wasn't even going there. Mine was more if you're copying across all those software installs, and I used to do it because I was doing software normalization from scratch, right?
Yeah.
There's no value behind it. There's zero.
No.
They're just going to provide you no insight. What you need is that baseline. You need the baseline you start from to say, come out of the system, here's where I started from, and further expand upon it. Maybe okay, software licenses, who the users are, things like that.
We
That's
managed
great.
it.
Don't know it all across. Don't need all the details. My point.
Yeah, no way. We managed that. So I mean, it's the software life cycle is what it is. It's the end of life for a piece of software. What do you do? There are a set of steps in a series of workflows that you should be doing as due diligence. I no longer need any copies of Windows 98. It's past. It's so far back. We don't need to retain it. You're going out and you should be cataloging that you destroyed X number of copies in the following locations, and you do a fully auditable, traceable path of software license destruction.
Yeah.
That you should be doing that. If you're not doing that, then you're not doing IT asset management. And this is an opportunity to find gluts of those things and put processes in place to just deal with them.
So I'm sure we've just blown the minds of all of our listeners right now, Rob, because we haven't just talked about cutting the cord. We've talked about the different aspects behind cutting the cord, right? When you talk about the stakeholders, we talk about the data, we talk about the process changes, we've talked about the governance tied around it us all, right? But what would be one additional nugget we've not touched on yet? What comes to mind?
Well, I'm not sure, but something did come to mind, and that is that there is an alternative philosophy that you just reach over and switch the thing off and wait for noise. I wouldn't advise it, but
that's true.
It's a way. Go ahead.
I dare you. Just switch. Come on. Just
at night after the zoo is closed, if somebody just walked through with the keys and just opened everything up and then left.
Well, in this case, we're talking about SaaS environments. It's a little different too.
Well, that's true. SaaS management is primarily subscription management, and if you weren't doing that good of a job in your tangible stuff, or if you weren't doing a good job in your other software licensing, I can't possibly see how you're doing well in SaaS management. But there are practical things to do with SaaS management so that you ensure that you're getting that optimized, right? There's a handful of functions that could be its own episode, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Love to
we have a lot of fun on that. We'll do that as a future episode. Absolutely.
I've had some great customers and good examples for that.
Oh yeah, we can do that. It doesn't matter where and everything we're talking about has a global reach. And now both these companies are both US based. So I'm not talking about from that standpoint. I'm talking about the content that Rob, you and I have been talking about now for 12 hours, 12 full hours here online.
Oh, yeah.
This is relative to irrelevant where people are around the globe, irrelevant the technologies they're switching to. You have to think about these aspects. It's extremely important to put that in place. Now, we're going to have a final episode on Wednesday. So we're going to wrap this all up, put a bow on it, talk about some lessons learned, even what Rob and I have learned over the past several weeks talking through all this.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to reinforce everyone as we're wrapping up today's session that all the activities we're talking about, even cutting the cord for these old systems, these are extremely relative to anything that you're working on. It could be a discovery tool. It could talk about a full system change out. You could talk about one little aspect of upgrading an environment, and say it's a procurement feed or something like that, or maybe your new integration of the procurement system. It's extremely relevant across the board. I just spin things out. We can keep going forever, right? You can talk about changing out your disposal vendor and how you pull that across, right? There's all sorts of things. It's extremely relative there, and I wanted to give that insight to everybody, because these are things you're not going to learn in a certification class. You're not going to learn in a classroom. You might learn. You'll learn in Mr. Bill's classroom. I'll put it that way, right? You'll hear me talk about it. You'll hear Rob talk about it. But in the typical classroom, they don't talk about things like this. They don't have this depth and this insight. They just don't, right? Mm-hmm. And that's important, because I want people to understand this doesn't just happen frivolously. This is a conscious effort to do this. Mm-hmm. You don't want someone who's just now learned, they've just been trained on the tool to say, okay, now you're going to implement this entire system.
No, then we'll all learn together.
Exactly, including the business. And then you're going to hire the right people anyway. So I'll be brutally honest, right? You have the knowledge to say, and they're going to ask the question, why'd you go here? Oh, it's cost savings. Like, and did you save money? Yeah. Did you save money? No. It cost you more. And Rob and I have talked about that several episodes the last few months.
Yeah, didn't save money, but the insurance company paid the claims. So
exactly. Yeah, so as I'm thinking about it, as you're moving forward, this also provides closure from the consulting side. So if you're working with a consulting organization, the statement of work, make sure what's delivered is out there. You provide that closure out there, right? And you have the insight on the consulting, as well as that relationship. Okay, is this someone you want to use in the future for upgrades or something like that, right?
Right.
It forms that relationship, because now you understand, okay, what do you have to do on your own versus what you can help others with.
Unknown caller.
Right. Yeah. They're calling in now. What can I say? It provides that insight, because that relationship is also very critical, because you're using a new tech. Who can you call and help from a support standpoint, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Call people that have already implemented it successfully elsewhere. I mean, if you and your crew get really good at this, stand up a company. Say, I hear everybody else in town is going to move to this system. We've done 4 implementations, all successful. We've done 5 implementations.
If they choose to do so. Yeah. So I'm going to put caution around that, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't start your own company and do your own thing if that's what you wish to do. Realize it's not just flipping a switch.
Oh, no, it's not.
It's not just flipping a switch, which a lot of people say, oh, I'm doing great here. I'm going to make millions doing it on my own. And you have no experience with the business. You have experience being a doer, right? Mm-hmm. That's the only cautionary point I'll put behind that, because and the reason why I even bring that up on that part and that rebuttal is because I'm seeing a lot of people today do that, and they're tanking. They're totally tanking, because they don't have the skills. Mm-hmm. They don't have the wherewithal to say, okay, from a business aspect, what's next?
Oh, yeah.
And that's important. We can do an entire session just on that alone. We probably should on that. Yes. Actually, I'm going to put that's actually a topic for the ITAM Summit. So I'm going to put that in Summit, so we're going to talk about that in depth in August. Because when you go on your own, totally different world. It's like, well, I hate working with leadership or management because they don't understand. I get it. The question is, are you able to go that next step in helping those other aspects, or are you looking at just one narrow window and sliver of what actually needs to happen for a system to go online?
Yeah.
Right. And that's a critical juncture. So but I just wanted to put that out there since we mentioned that topic. I'm not saying people shouldn't start their own business. I'm an entrepreneur on several different fronts. I have a couple of companies going on, but I have to say I'm a rare breed compared to most, right? I've just been around in my entire life. So, but is it for everybody? It's not. But from a closure perspective, what I want to put on cutting the cord is say, okay, as you cut the cord on the system, right? Keep in mind the multiple different aspects you need to have inclusive. Mm-hmm. And when you think about that, it's like, we don't have all the answers here. We're providing insights on what we've seen, what comes to mind for us.
Mhm.
There may be a different twist you need for your environment. It could be regulatory. It could be a specific type of industry, right? And you have it specific to your culture and how you're looking at it, because there are cultural differences too. It could be a technology switch and how you look at the new vendor and struggles you're having even for saying, why won't it do this? Because you found a major bug and all of a sudden it's impacting you. You don't know what's going to happen, right? And there's no way to predict that until it occurs. But don't fear that. Just keep pushing forward. Keep pushing forward because that's extremely important. Extremely important. Rob, we're at the top of the hour. Any last wisdoms of Rob's wiseness?
Yeah, in some cases, you don't have to do this from the start. In some cases, if you've got really good vendors out there and product support and implementation support, there may be playbooks. If they've done this with their system 150 times, at some point, they will have jotted something down along the way. I would inquire about any new system implementation playbooks or workflows that they have and what that assistance is. You should be doing this in cooperation with the vendor anyway. So see to it that that's written into your contract and that you can move forward together as a partner with the people that you bought the systems from.
That's a great point. Alignment is extremely important, right?
Yeah.
Extremely important. And if you need to be around an environment to actually help you with that, to have some more insights, hey, go right there.
Call.
Be part of the co-op. Be part of the co-op. Be part of the community and tribe that understands us. Not just say, yeah, we'll get to it. And somebody starts serving you vendors. They might serve you vendors. That's up to you. Might start serving you services proposals. It's like, no, I need time to talk it out, and then we'll figure out the rest. Because you have to build that trust first. So if you want something, co-op, absolutely be part of that, make it happen. Because when you're amongst your tribe, you're amongst your tribe. So make that happen. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a wrap for today's Accidental CMDB scenario. We're going to wrap this up on Wednesday. And then we have a special announcement on Friday. So more forthcoming on that. It's going to blow your mind. Not that we don't blow their minds every time, Rob. We do a great job on that. Mm-hmm. Thanks, everyone, for being here. And we will see everyone on Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern. See you then. Thanks, guys.
Bye for now.